Welcome to Digital Learning at the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, bringing world-class management education from the beautiful campus at IIMB to you through the internet. The Digital Learning Initiative at IIMB aims to build a platform for making knowledge more accessible to a global society. So join us in this exciting journey of teaching and learning. Hi, welcome to IIMB. We got a lovely campus here and we're here today with Professor Ramya Ranganathan. Professor Ramya Ranganathan is a faculty in Organizational Behavior and HR Management at IIMB. An electronics engineer from IIT Madras, she holds a PGDM from IIM Ahmedabad and a doctorate from London Business School. Her personal passion is to help people find joy and meaning through their work. And indeed, in the past 4 years, Professor Ramya has reached over 2,000 participants through her courses and workshops on topics like positive psychology, leading with joy, personal values, goals and career options, and managing stress. Professor Ramya, it's so lovely to have you with us today as part of the digital learning efforts with your online module on managing stress. Now, you've taught this session a number of times to a wide variety of audience, MBA students, working professionals, public sector workers, medical professionals, educators and entrepreneurs. What has been your experience in teaching stress management and what motivated you to put together this online offering?
Thank you, Ramya. Yes, it is a joy for me to be here and to offer this module on stress management. And I do think it is a very relevant topic to everyone, to professionals, to students, to the entire range of the population, especially in today's age, because if there's one thing that I can say with certainty, it is that I haven't come across anyone who does not experience stress. It almost appears like no one is immune to stress. And the reason I want to offer this module is because while we all go through stress, there are certain ways in which stress fundamentally alters our ability to behave and work in the place. There are physiological changes that are induced in the body. There are changes that occur in the mind, in the brain, the way our brains function. There are changes with regard to priorities. For example, you might have noticed that when you're not stressed, you naturally have a way of prioritizing certain things, perhaps things related to your values or things that hold meaning for you over and above certain other things. But when we get stressed, quite naturally, the kind of prioritizing that automatically goes on in our heads, our brains, changes. The other change that occurs for most people when we go through stress is changes in our social behavior, the kind of people we want to reach out to. So you might be an introvert, but you might behave differently when you're stressed, right? Because of all these changes, I think it's vital and key to understand how stress impacts us, and that is why I've decided to offer this module too, as part of the Open Learning Initiative.
So, Professor, you mentioned that stress has an impact on one's behavior. Now, this is going to be different for different people depending on their personal and professional circumstances. Then how can a uniform set of stress management techniques be useful to everybody?
Good point. Indeed, different people are going to experience very different stressors depending on their stage of life, depending on their circumstances and their professions. They're also going to experience coping with stress and managing stress very differently. There are a lot of very good stress management tools and techniques out there in the management literature, in the sports literature, in the sports field, in art therapy, in yoga. I myself have benefited largely from using some of these techniques, and they're very good techniques. However, in this module, I'm not going to focus on any particular stress management technique. What I plan to run you through in this module is a journey of exploration where we try and understand the changes that stress induces in our bodies and minds, our thinking processes. And those changes that stress induces in us is common to all of humanity. So it's very similar, whether you're a student or whether you're a professional, a man or a woman. there are large similarities in how the human system is designed to respond to stress, and that is what we're going to be focusing on.
So today there are, like you rightly said, lots of quick fix remedies for managing stress. Now you are going to focus on the science underlying the stress response. Why would you choose to do that as opposed to explaining some practical techniques?
My aim in this module is to take participants through the natural stress response. I will encourage participants to drop any preconceived notions they might have about stress being good or bad, functional or dysfunctional. Stress just is. Let me give you an analogy. Look at gravity. Yeah? Is gravity good or bad? It sounds like a silly question, right? Gravity just is. Sure, we can fall down and get hurt, or we might drop something. I might drop this mic and it might break. But we don't blame gravity. We work with gravity. Once we understand how gravity works, then we can play cricket better. We can send airplanes cruising into the sky. So that's the process that we're going to follow with stress as well. We're going to understand the system through which stress is triggered, understand the changes that get induced in our bodies. There's a lot of debate in the mainstream literature about stress being good or bad, but we're not going to get into that. We're going to understand what happens, and then I'll let you to decide what is it that you want to do with these changes that are induced? How do you want to leverage them? Can you leverage some of the changes that stress creates in our bodies to work more effectively? Definitely. But you're going to decide that for yourself once you understand what happens when we undergo stress. My aim in doing this is to empower you to be able to work with stress and its effects rather than just be an unsuspecting victim of its effects.
Well, that analogy which you gave with gravity really puts things in perspective, and it really makes me want to register for your course too. How do you plan to teach this course? Now, how have you structured your online module?
In the second part of the module, we focus on a particular variant of stress that is reaching epidemic proportions in the workplace as well as educational institutes. This variant of stress has a name of its own. It's called attention deficit trait. What do we mean by attention deficit trait? It is something that is induced by the kind of work environment and that all of us get exposed to. So it is something that's triggered when there are a lot of parallel demands, simultaneous demands on our time and attention. So what that does is it literally loads the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking and logical evolved part of our brain. And this part of the brain gives up and when it does that, it gives the control of the brain actually goes to the primitive part of the brain, which then comes into the riding seat. And understandably, this reduces our ability to work with several things that are stressing them out. And this is known as attention deficit trait. So if you've seen some people, or if you've seen yourself, when you have a lot of little things that are, that need to be done, and there's nothing that's really Himalayan to do, but there's just so many little things to do, and you're getting irritated and frenzied and unable to do anything, unable to focus on any one task and really get it done, then you're probably in the vicinity of ADT. And this is something that we're going to be discussing quite in depth in this module. We look at ADT not only as a problem to be overcome, but rather as a signal that we are not organizing our life and not organizing our tasks or our days in a way that makes the most effective use of our brains, our very precious resources. So we look at ADT, we look at the signals, right? We learn to identify signals that our brains are not really functioning the way they can be functioning. And then we look at what can we do so that we can cope better with this. How can we bounce back elegantly when we recognize that we are suffering from ADT, when we recognize that our prefrontal cortex is actually given up and the primitive parts of our brain are in control. And this is my favorite part of the course really, because it is at this point that we will actually visit certain tools and techniques, not too many, but we will understand why they work. So we'll talk about things like like just going out for a walk or watching your breath or having, taking some water. But we'll look at what this does to the relationship between your primitive brain and your prefrontal cortex and how this helps you bounce back from an attack of ADT. So once you know this, you can design your own stress management techniques.
Thank you, Professor Ramya.